We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Hamad Aleph Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 55a. The Gemara asks, Minolon deboit Safon, from where do we know that the Shalmei Tzibur, the communal carbon shlomims, how do we know that they require slaughtering in the north of the Azara? And the Gemara continues, Detani Rabba bar Rav Chanan Kame de Rava. Rabba bar Rav Chanan taught in front of Rava. Some have the gears of Rava bar Rav Chanan taught in front of Rava. The pasuk says, Va'asisem seir izim echad lechatos. It says you're going to make a chatos, and we compare the two. Machatos b'tzafon, just like the chatos is in the north. Av Shalmei Tzibur b'tzafon, so too the Shalmei Tzibur is in the north. Rashi explains, V'asisem seir izim gabe shtei halechem v'kivsei atzeres ksiv. This pasuk is written by the shtei halechem and the kivsei atzeres, as Rashi noted on the previous Amud. The kivsei atzeres that's the example of the Shalmei Tzibur. V'seifei dekro shnei chavasim. The end of this pasuk is Ushnei Chavasim, so again it's comparing the Chatos to the Shalmei Tzibur. Just like the Chatos is B'tzafon, so too the Shalmei Tzibur is B'tzafon. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava, Rava said to him, V'chi chatos mehechon elamda. But where do we learn chatos from? How do we know in the first place the chatos is b'tzafon? Me'ola, we learn that from an ola. But then we have a problem. Davar halamid behekesh, something that's learned through a hekesh, chozer malamid behekesh, is teaching through a hekesh. That is problematic. And so the Gemara instead says, Ela rather, midetani Rav Mari, braid Rav Kahana. It's from what Rav Mari, the son of Rav Kahana, taught. The pasuk says, Al oloseichem avial zivchei shalmeichem. It says your olos, it says your shlomim. Ma'ola kadshe kachim, and we make the following comparison. Just like the ola is considered kadshe kachim, it's holy of holies. Af zivchei shalmei tzibur kadshe kachim, so too communal carbon shlomim is considered to be kadshe kachim. And ma'ola b'tzafon, just like olas in the north, af zivchei shalmei tzibur b'tzafon, so too the communal shlomim is in the north. Rashi explains, V'al zivchei shalmeichem al karchach b'shalmei tzibur ksiv. Rashi says you have to say, when it says Zivchei Shalmeichem in this pasuk, that it's talking about the communal shalomim. She'ein carbon yachid aton klishir, because the carbon yachid, an individual's carbon, would not require klishir, music. She'ein omrim shir al carbon yachid kedamar be'erchin. We don't say shir on an individual's carbon, as we say in erchin. Kadshe kachim, when something is kadshe kachim, so nifsalim b'tvul yom uviyotze, you have various kinds of disqualifications by tvul yom. That's somebody again who's tameh, he immersed that day, but he didn't yet wait for the end of the day to be totally pure. Biyotze is when it leaves the proper area. And so again, you have these various disqualifications that occur by kadshe kachim, and that's what the comparison is between ola and zivchei shalmei tzibur. They're both kadshe kachim, and they are both b'tzafon. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ela hekesha kama l'mayasa. But if that's true, we did have a comparison before between chatos and shalmei tzibur. What is that comparison for? And the Gemara says, ki chatos. The Gemara says the comparison is to tell you that it's like chatos in the following manner. Ma chatos eino necheles ela lezichrei kahuna. Just like the chatos is only eaten by male kohanim. Af zivchei shalmei tzibur lezichrei kahuna. So too, when it comes to shalmei tzibur, it's eaten by the male kohanim. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye, Abaye said to him, Yachiv, so, Gabe el Nazir, what about by the ram that's brought by the Nazir, Dechsiv, it's written, V'hikriv es karbono la'Hashem keves ben shanaso tamim echad liola, v'chavso achas bas shanaso tamim alachatos, v'ayil echad tamim l'shlomim. It seems to be a comparison between all of these karbonos. Hachanami here also, Nema dehikish hakasav l'chatos. Should we say that there's a comparison here between the el Nazir and the chatos? Ma'chatos eino nechelas elo l'zichrei kahuna, just like a chatos is only eaten by the male kohanim. Af el Nazir nami eino nechel elo l'zichrei kahuna. Are we going to say that the el Nazir also, it's only eaten for zichrei kahuna, it's only eaten for the male kohanim? But the Gemara says, no, hachi hashta, what kind of comparison is that? We would never say that just because you make the comparison above to Shalmei Tzibur, doesn't mean you would make that comparison over here to the El Nazir, because Hasam over there, Kevan Dechsiv, V'lokach HaKohen Es HaZroa B'Sheila Min Ha'ayil, since it's written in the Pasuk that the Kohen takes the Zroa B'Sheila Min Ha'ayil, so that implies that's the part that the Kohen takes, but Mechlal Dekule Bailim Achli Lei, but that implies that the rest of it is eaten by the owners, and so therefore it's a clear implication from the pasuk that the carbon is eaten by the owner, and therefore obviously it's not eaten only by male kohanim. But the Gemara still says zeroa b'sheila, but the cooked zeroa, the zeroa is the front leg of the animal, that part which goes to the kohanim. Mi'olo l'sachel l'zichrei kahuna. We should still make the comparison at least to say that we know that goes to the kohanim, and it should only be eaten by the male kohanim, which isn't actually true. And so the Gemara says kasha. The Gemara leaves that as a difficulty. And the Gemara continues, if you want, I could say that Kodshe Ikri, Kodshe Kodshim Lo Ikru, that really it's only referred to, this is talking about the El Nazir, the Zroa B'Shela, the foreleg of that ram, that's called Kodesh, it's not called Kodshe Kodshim, and so therefore, since it's just called Kodesh, it's not Kodshe Kodshim, we understand that it's not eaten only by the Zichrei Kahuna. And so the Gemara says, but if that's true, so what is the purpose of this comparison? Again, there is a comparison between the El Nazir and the Chatas in the Pasuk. What is the purpose of that comparison? And the Gemara says to that, Amar Rava says, Shem Gilach al Echad Mishloshton Yotza. It's really a comparison between all three of the Karbanos that are mentioned in that Pasuk. Again, the way the Pasuk is formulated is it says, Keves ben Shnaso Tamim Echad Liola, talks about an Ola, V'chavsa Achas Bashnasa Tvimo Lechatos, and then Ve'el Echad Tamim L'Shlamim, mentions all three Karbanos, and it's saying that if the Nazir would shave, even after bringing just one of those three, he doesn't have to bring all of them, he still Yotze, he still fulfills his obligation. And Rashi explains, Hakesha Kama, that first Hekesh, that first comparison, what does that come for? The Gemara ends up saying that it's teaching that by the Shalmei Tzibor, it's just eaten by the Zichrei Kahuna. The Iskish L'Chatos, again, that's the comparison between Shalmei Tzibor and Karban Chatos, Machatos, just like Chatos. And then the Gemara said, if that's true, so by El Nazir, you should say the same thing. And the Gemara said to that, Kevan dechsiv v'lokach hakohen asazroa aseifa dekra kodesh ula kohen. It says it goes to the kohen. Shma mino ashar l'bailim. You see that the rest goes to the owner. And Rashi continues. The Gemara said kodesh ikroy. Again, when it comes to the zroa b'sheila, it's called kodesh. Zroa b'sheila, the zroa b'sheila of the El Nazir, that's called kodesh. Umidloksiv kodshe kodshim, from the fact that it doesn't say holy of holies, it just says holy. Shma mino lo iskish l'chatos lachi. You see that it's not compared to chatos for this purpose. And again, in terms of being eaten by the Zichrei Kahuna. The tava lechumra de kodesh kadashim, that it should have that stringency of kodesh kadashim. The vehedya miate midichsiv kodesh, it's excluded explicitly because it says kodesh v'lo chsiv kodshim. It doesn't say kodshim. V'gabe shalmei tzibur, now by the communal Karban Shlamim, where we are saying that there is that comparison and it has to be eaten by the Zichrei Kahuna. Aval gav dechsibu nami kodesh yu laHashem lakohen. There also it says kodesh, so therefore we should say you don't have such a stringency. V'lo chsiv kodshei kodshim. It doesn't say that it's kodesh kodashim. Kevan dechsiv laHashem. Rashi says since it says laHashem over there, so lav lemuutehu mehakesha. It's not coming to exclude it from that comparison. Since it says laHashem, it's to Hashem. The ikol amemer command dechsiv kodshei kodshim dami. Saying laHashem over there is as if it says Kodshe Kodshim. And then the Gemara said, Iskish El Nazir L'Chatos. So if so, what's the purpose of comparing the El Nazir to the Chatos? And the Gemara said, Shem Gilach Alachas Mishloshton Yotza. Again, the pasuk there is talking about Nazir. If he shaves on one of them, he is Yotze V'Chatos Hu Di Alpha Mishlamim. According to this understanding, Chatos is really learned from Shlamim. Ma El Nazir Im Heviu Yechidi. Just like by the El Nazir, if he brings it alone below Chatos Viola Yotze, without the Chatas and the Yola, he is still Yotze. And that's it says in the pasuk that he's able to drink wine after that. It's after that one individual action, which is the shlamim. Because the main shaving of the Nazir is dependent upon the shlamim. Because he even uses the hair as part of the procedure. He puts it there by the fire. Hashlam, on the fire that's beneath the Zevach Hashlamim. Betanya b'Sifri v'Gilach HaNazir Pesach Ol Moed b'Shlamim HaKosem Medaber. Also, it says in the Sifri that the pasuk of V'Gilach HaNazir is talking by Shlamim. Kolomar Gilucho Shel Nazir Al Yedei Davar Shenemar Bo v'Shachat Pesach Ol Moed v'Hainu Shlamim. The shaving of the Nazir is through the carbon which is slaughtered Pesach Ol Moed, where it says v'Shachat Pesach Ol Moed, which is the Shlamim b'Vayikra. Oeno Ela Kamashmo Sheyigalach Pesach Ol Moed Mamish. Maybe it means to say he actually has to shave at the entrance of the Ol Moed. Imam Ritkain Derech Bizoy, and again the Brisa goes on to say that's not the case. But the point over here is the comparison is therefore made that this is true of all the karbanos. If he's gilach on any one of the three karbanos, he is going to be yotze. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hatoda ve'el Nazir, the carbon toda, and also the ram of the Nazir, which was just mentioned, Kodshim Kalim. Those are considered the lighter form of Kodesh. Shchitasan b'chol makom ba'azar. they can be slaughtered anywhere in the Azara. V'damun ton shtei matana shein arba. With regards to the blood, the application of the blood, it's 2 applications which are 4. V'nechalin b'chol ha'ir, and they're eaten in the entire city of Yerushalayim. L'chol adam, anyone can eat it. B'chol ma'achol, in any fashion that you prepare it. L'yom v'layla ad chatzos, it's eaten for a day and a night until chatzos, until midnight. Hamuram and mehem, that which is lifted or separated from them, kayotze bohen, has the same halachas, meaning the portions that are taken for the kohanim follow the same basic halachas. Ela shehamuram nechol kohanim, except that the part that is separated to be given to the kohanim is eaten by the kohanim, l'neshayim v'livneim u'lavdeim, and to their wives, their sons, and their slaves. Here it's talking about avodim that are avodim kenanim. And the point over here is, again, that portion that's given to the Kohanim, it can be eaten with the same halachas, but it's eaten by the Kohanim, again, or Neshayim B'neihem V'yavdehem. And Rashi explains, Kachim Kalim means to say, Ein Mo'alin Bohen. That refers to the fact that there's no Me'ila when it comes to Kachim Kalim. B'chol Mokum, in any place. Ein Tu'un in Safon, there's no requirement of north. V'necholin B'chol Ha'ir, B'gamar Mefarish, they can be eaten in the whole city. The Gemara will explain that. L'chol Adam, L'zarim, anyone can eat it, meaning even a non-Kohen. L'yom V'layla, B'todaksib, B'yom Karbono Yeyochel, Lo Yaniach Mimenu Ad Boker. By the Karban Tod, it says, don't leave it till the morning, so you see a day and a night. V'tanya Toda Shalom of L'rabo Shalmei Nazir. Also, we learned, it says, Toda Shalom of, that includes Shalmei Nazir. Hamura Mehem, that which is separated from them. And Rashi says, Min HaToda, from the Toda, that's Chaziv V'shok Keshar Shlamim. That refers to the Chaz and the Shok. That is the breast and the thigh that's separated like all other Shlamim. Do Eskish L'Shlamim, because it is compared to Shlamim. Kida Amron Zevach HaShlamim Im Al Toda, like it says in the Pasuk, it says Zevach HaShlamim, and then it says Toda. V'yarba Chalos Midalid Minin Shabo, and then you have 4 chalos from the 4 different types of challah. Kedechsiv Echon Mikol Karban La Kohen Hazorek, again, 1 from each goes to the Kohen. Umura Me'el Nazir Zeroa B'Shela V'chazav V'shok Nami Beiksivi. When it comes to what's separated from the El Nazir, the Zeroa B'Shela, which is the front leg, the cooked front leg, and the chazav v'shok, again, the breast and the thigh, it's written over there, Nami Beiksivi V'chalos Matzo Achas Urekik Matzo Echad. Again, it says that you're separating from the bread offering, Kayotze Bohen V'necholin, B'chol Ha'ir L'yom V'layla. They follow the same halachas. They're eaten in the entire city for a day and a night. Ela she'eno l'ba'ilim ela l'kohanim. The only difference is that the part that is separated, that's not eaten by the owners, that is eaten by the kohanim. V'lin Sheyem, into their wives. K'dechsiv, as it's written, V'eschaze hatnufa ata uvonecha uvnosecha, to you, your sons, your daughters, and again to the avodim as well. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Eis chazeh hatnufa ves shok hatruma. The pasuk says the chazeh and the shok, tochlu b'makam tar, you're going to eat it in a pure place. Amar Reb Nechemia says, V'chi rishonim b'tumah acholim, were the earlier karbanos mentioned in these psukim, are they eaten in tumah, in impurity? Of course not. Elo tar mechlal shu tameh. Rather, the word tar over here in the pasuk implies that there is some degree, some level, so to speak, of tumah. As the Gemara will now explain, tahar mitumas mitzora, it means it's an area which is pure from tumas mitzora. The mitzora is sent out of all of the machanos, all of the camps, is not allowed to be in Yerushalayim, but v'tameh mitumas zav, but still it can be eaten. These parts of the carbon can be eaten in a place which is tameh, in terms of tumas zav, meaning it's an area of the camps where the zav is allowed to be. A zav is allowed to be in Yerushalayim, and so therefore essentially we are saying that is the source that these karbanos can be eaten within the entire Yerushalayim. Ve'ezeh zemachane Yisrael. Ve'ezeh zemachane Yisrael. What camp are we talking about? That's Machane Yisrael. Again, Machane Yisrael is the place where the mitzora is sent out of there, but the zav is allowed to be there. But the Gemara continues, Ve'ematar mitumas zav, v'tameh mitumas meis. But how do you know that we're talking about the Machane Yisrael? Maybe we're talking about a place which is pure from tumas zav, an area where a zav is not allowed to be, but it's tameh mitumas meis. Someone who's tameh meis is allowed to be in that area. Ve'ezeh, and what area is that? Zeh Machane Leviyah. That would be the camp of the Levium. And in terms of Yerushalayim, the Beis HaMikdash, the Machane Leviyah is the same as the Har HaBayis. And so maybe it has to be eaten only in Har HaBayis. Maybe it can't be eaten in the entire Yerushalayim. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Abaya says, Amar Kra, the Pasuk says, the Pasuk right before says, V'achaltem osa b'makam kadosh, eat it b'makam kadosh. That's talking about the carbon mincha, that Pasuk. And it means osa b'makam kadosh, that one is eaten b'makam kadosh. V'lo acheres b'makam kadosh, but the other one, meaning the carbon we're talking about over here, does not have to be b'makam kadosh, meaning it does not have to be in the Azara, and so therefore afka l'machane levia. Therefore, that says that it can be eaten even in the machane levia. And then hadar ksib b'makom tar. Then when it says b'makom tar afka l'machane Yisrael, that means to say it can even be eaten in machane Yisrael, even in all of Yerushalayim. And the Gemara continues with another approach to understanding the psukim. Rava Amar Rava says osa b'makom kadosh. Again, that one is eaten. The karban mincha is b'makom kadosh, v'lo acheres b'makom kadosh. But again, the other karban, that does not have to be b'makom kadosh. And so afka legamri, that takes it out completely. It doesn't even need to be in Yerushalayim. It doesn't even need to be in the machane Yisrael. But hadar kasav rachmana tochlu b'makom tar. Then when the pasuk says eat it b'makom tar, ayla l'machane Yisrael, that says that it should be eaten in the machane Yisrael. V'yema ayla l'machane levia. The Gemara asks, why don't we say that it means you have to eat it in the machane levia? The Gemara says to that, l'chada ma'ilinon letarti lo ma'ilinon. We bring it into one camp, but we're not going to say that it's required to bring it in two camps, even deeper within, so to speak, within the city to machane levia. That we won't say. But the Gemara says, if so, afuke nami. When we're taking it out, again, according to Rava, osa b'makom kadosh, but lo acheres b'makom kadosh means afka legamri. But there also we should say, l'chada mafkinan mitarti lo mafkinan. We should only take it out one camp. We shouldn't take it out more than that. V'yod, and further, lo sucha lechol bisharecha ksiv. It's written in the pasuk that you're not able to eat it bisharecha. So what does it even mean that it's afka? That in theory we could have taken it out of Yerushalayim. It says you can't eat it bisharecha outside of Yerushalayim. That would not even have been a possibility. And so the Gemara says, Ela machvarta kedei Abaya, rather go back to the answer or the approach that Abaya gave. And Rashi explains, Tochlu b'makom tar, eat it in a makom tar, b'parshas vayhi bayom hashmini ksiv. This is written in Parsha Shmini, the offerings that were brought, the karbanos that were brought by the inauguration of the Mishkan. V'chi harishonim b'tumah achlim. Now, were the earlier karbanos mentioned in those psukim, were they eaten b'tumah? Karbanos harishonim shenemru tchila be'inyan. These are the earlier karbanos mentioned, kagon seirim u'mincha, like the seirim and the mincha. Tar mechlal shu tameh. And so then the Gemara said, it says the word tar because there is some level of tumah, meaning midaloksiv kodesh. It doesn't say eat it in a holy place. It says a pure place. Shma mina tahar b'mixas ka'amar v'lo menakol. It means to say it's an area that is somewhat pure, but not totally. Haketzad, how so? B'machane hatar mitumas mitzora. It's a camp where it's tahar from the impurity of the mitzora. She'ein mitzora nichnas lo, that a mitzora is not allowed to enter there. V'tamei mitumas zav, but it's tamei in terms of zav. Sha'zavin nichnasin sham. It's an area where the zavin are allowed to enter. Ve'ezeh zemachane Yisrael. What is this? It's the Machane Yisrael b'midbar, in the midbar, where the Yisraelim were called degel b'soch asifas diglo uveis olamim toch Yerushalayim. The equivalent of Machane Yisrael in the midbar in terms of Yerushalayim is the entire Yerushalayim. Da'amrinan b'psachim mitzora mishtala chutz l'gimel machanos. We say in psachim and mitzora sent out of all three camps, again meaning outside of Machane Yisrael or outside of Yerushalayim. Zav nichnas l'Machane Yisrael avalo l'Machane Levia. A zav is allowed to be in Machane Yisrael but not in Machane Levia. V'hu b'midbar chanias halavim. Again, Machane Levia refers to the midbar where the Levium camped. Saviv lemishkan ha'edus. They were around the Mishkan. Bebeis olamim harabayis. The equivalent of that by the Beis Hamikdash is the harabayis. V'tamei meis muter likanis b'Machane Levia. Tamei meis is even allowed to be in Machane Levia. Shenemar v'yikach Moshe atzmos Yosef imo. It says that Moshe took the bones of Yosef with him, imo b'mechitzaso, meaning in his Machane. Moshe, of course, was in Machane Levia. And then the Gemara brought the pasuk Osa, the pasuk earlier, right before, b'mincha ksibahu in Yana. That's talking about carbon mincha. That has to be in an area b'makom kadosh. Ve'ein acheres, ve'ein lachmei toda. But when it comes to lachmei toda, again, we're talking here about the carbon toda. That doesn't have to be b'makom kadosh. That doesn't have to be in the same kadosh place. Afka mimachane shchina shekarva b'socha l'machane Levia. So we take it out. Doesn't have to be machane shchina. Now it could even be machane Levia. And then hadr b'makom tar, then it says b'makom tar, l'hakel, to be even more lenient. V'lomar tahara kol, do any amount of purity is good. The lo itzrich pshita dev'tuma mamish lo achlila. Obviously, it's not eaten in impurity. It must be telling us about the area where it is eaten. And again, the idea is that these karbonos can be eaten in all of Yerushalayim. And then we have the approach of Rava, afka legamri, that the pasuk is completely taking it out. Ve'afilu chutz l'choma b'mashma chutz Yerushalayim, that you would have thought to say even outside of Yerushalayim, and then we bring it back in. And then the Gemara Gemara ended up asking, V'yod lo sucha lecho b'sharecha ksiv. It already says you can't eat it in your gates, you can't eat it out of Yerushalayim. That would not have even been a havamina, it wouldn't have even been a thought. How could Rava say that we would have thought to take it out completely? And so therefore, again, the Gemara returned to the answer of Abaya. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Shlomim kachim kalim. Shlomim are kachim of lesser holiness. Shchitasan b'chol makam. They can be slaughtered anywhere, ba'azara, anywhere in the courtyard. V'domon ton shtei matana shein arben. With regards to the blood, it requires 2 applications, which are 4. V'necholin b'chol ha'ir l'chol adam. It can be eaten in the entire city of Yerushalayim. Anyone can eat it. B'chol ma'echol, in any way to prepare it. L'shnei yomim v'layla echad. By the Shlomim, they are eaten for 2 days and a night. And hamuram mehem, that which is separated for them, kayotze b'hem, follows the same laws. Ela shehamuram nechol l'kohanim l'neshayim v'livneihem uliavdeim. Except again, what is separated is eaten by the kohanim and their wives and their children and their slaves. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, V'shachtu Pesach Ol Moed. It says slaughtered at the entrance of the Ol Moed. V'shachar oso lifnei Ol Moed, and it says slaughtered before the Ol Moed. V'shachar oso lifnei Ol Moed, and it says again to slaughter it before the Ol Moed. These are all the various kinds of animals that are brought as shlomim, and it says 3 times essentially the same basic idea. Lahachshir es kol haruchos, and what's that to tell us? That tells us that all the different directions are kosher, bekachim kalim, when it comes to kachim kalim, meaning all the areas of the Azara, and Kal V'chomer L'tzafon, certainly the north is going to be kosher. Why? Because Umad Kodshei Kodshim Shelo Huchsheru B'chol HaRuchos, if when it comes to the Holy of Holy types of karbanos, which you're not allowed to slaughter in all directions of the Azara, but Huchsheru B'tzafon, but you're allowed to slaughter in the north part of the Azara. So Kodshim Kalim Shehuchsheru B'chol HaRuchos, when it comes to the lesser sanctity, those kinds of karbanos which can be in all different directions of the Azara, Eino Din Shehuchsheru B'tzafon, isn't it logical to say you can certainly slaughter it in the north? And the Braisa continues, Rabbi Eliezer says, Lo never akasav ela lahachsher tzafon. The real purpose of this pasuk is to say that the north is okay. Sheyachol, because one might have thought v'halodinu that you can make the following logical argument: Umad kodshim kalim shehuchshru b'chol haruchos. If when it comes to the karbonos of lesser sanctity, that it's kosher in all the directions of the Azara, lo huchshar mekomon eitzel kodshei kodshim, but you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do the kodshei kodshim in their area. Meaning the Kodshei Kodshim are restricted to the north, they cannot be slaughtered in other areas. So Kodshei Kodshim shelo huchshru ela b'tzafon, so maybe Kodshei Kodshim, which can only be in the north, eino din shelo huchshru mekomon eitzel Kodshim kalim. Wouldn't it make sense to say that their area, the north, would not be allowed for Kodshim kalim? In other words, if when it comes to Kodshei Kodshim, it can only be in the north and not in the other areas, so when it comes to Kodshim kalim, it can only be in the other areas and not in the north. That's what one might have said. Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says Oel Moed, it says Oel Moed, and Rashi explains B'chol Mokum, in all places in the Azara, Af B'daro, meaning again even in the south. Uva Gemara Yolef, the Gemara will learn the south. B'chol Ha'ir, it can be eaten in the whole city. Keda Amrin Le'el B'chaz of Eshok, the Shalma Yom Shmini. That's what we just said earlier, that the Chaz of Eshok of the Shlomim of the Yom Shmini, again of that day of the inauguration of the Mishkan, that was eaten in the entire city of Yerushalayim. L'shnei Yomim V'laylo Echad. When it comes to regular Shlomim, it's 2 days and a night that it's eaten. Da'achik Sibahu, that's written in the pasuk. Uva Gemara Maisila, the Gemara will bring the pasuk. And the Gemara brought 3 psukim, V'shachtu kol shalosh parshios b'shlamim. All 3 psukim that we're bringing over here are talking about karban shlamim. Chada b'ben bakar, v'chada b'ben kesev, v'chada b'eiz. Again, different animals, by the cattle, by the sheep, by the goat. B'kamaisa ksiv v'shachtu pesach ol moed, u'v'tarti ksiv lifnei ol moed. And in one of them it says v'shachtu pesach ol moed. The other ones it says lifnei ol moed. And why is it written lahachshir kol harucho sheba azara, to say that all the different areas of the Azara, it's okay. The lifnei mashma kol shelifnei ahechol v'shebetz dadin lekamei yolef u'mefarish lo. Lifnei sounds like in front of the hechol, and then in terms of the sides, all of this will be learned and explained later on. And then kal v'chomer letzafon, a kal v'chomer to the north, liyerech mizbeach tzafoni hakavua la'ola l'kachei kachim, for sure to the north where ola and kachei kachim are slaughtered, that's for sure okay for kachim kalim. Umisham plugsa de polig Rebbe Eliezer Allah. It's the only reason this is being stated is because Rebbe Eliezer is going to argue on this. V'yamer, he's going to say tzafon itzrich kra behedya l'rebuye l'shchitas kachim kalim. He's going to say no, the north needs a pasuk to include it by slaughtering of kachim kalim. Tzafon. So it's Rich L'Tanakam L'Meimar Hai Kal V'Chomer L'Tzafon. That's why the Tanakama says it's necessary to say that we make a Kal V'Chomer to the north. You don't need a pasuk. Lo bo echad min haksuvim halalu elo lahachshir tzafon l'kamei mefarish my pluksai. The Gemara later on will explain exactly what their machlokas is, again between the Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer over here. Sheyachol v'halodinu, one might have thought to make the following Kal V'Chomer shelo yeh tzafon b'chlal lifnei oel moed lahachshiro l'shchita shlamim. Maybe tzafon is not included in lifnei oel moed. Maybe it's not okay for the slaughtering of shlamim. Lo huchshar mekoman, meaning shlosha haruchos haksheros lohem lo huchshar l'shchitas kachei kachim. The areas, the three directions, so to speak, which are kosher for the kachei kalim, that's not allowed for kachei kachim. So you might think the reverse or the inverse is true as well. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis.